Hi, today in this video I want to go over how to get started with Tanzu Kubernetes Grid running in AWS. The first thing that we'll need to do is create a management cluster. This is going to be a separate Kubernetes cluster that lives in Amazon or in any other cloud provider of choice, and we're going to use Cluster API to talk through that management cluster when we create our actual workload clusters. So we'll start the process by using the TKG CLI, and we're going to say TKG init, and we're going to pass it a -u flag to get a useful graphical installer that we can use in our browser. So today we support vSphere and AWS with more cloud providers coming. Today we're going to go with the Amazon cloud provider. To start with, you'll need to provide a few credentials to connect to your account. We'll start off with an access and a secret key pair, as well as an SSH key name to provide it. This is going to be the name of the key pair as it appears in your AWS console. Next, we'll pick a region that we want our management cluster to live in. And we'll hit connect. Once we've successfully connected to Amazon, we'll hit next and choose what we want for our VPC. So we can choose to either create a new one or we can choose from an existing VPC. Since we're keeping things simple for this quick start, we're actually going to go ahead and just create a brand new VPC for this exercise. And since we're just getting started, the default values are just fine. Next is the management cluster settings. This is going to be the VMs that make up your management cluster. You can choose from production or from development. The key indicator being choosing development gives you one node in your control plane, and production is going to give you 3 nodes in your control plane. For this quick start, we'll choose development. To keep things reasonable, we'll start off with just a medium-sized VM for our control plane. Go ahead and give it a name. This name should be descriptive because this is the name that will appear in the command line when you're interacting with TKG. So feel free to make this as specific as suits your needs. The Bastion host is optional. It's for connecting 2 VMs that make up your control plane. To keep things simple and to skim just a little bit of cost off of our compute costs, we're going to go ahead and uncheck that. Next, we'll choose the type of worker nodes that go into our control plane. And last, we'll choose the AZ that our control plane is going to live in. And the last section that we need to fill out is going to be the network settings inside our K8s clusters. Since we're doing just a simple quick start here, the default values are going to be fine. The last thing to do is give our configs a quick review. And down at the bottom, we can see that if we ever want to do this again, if we want to do it quickly or tie it into a pipeline, we can copy and save that off to put into future workloads. So with that, all that's left is to go ahead and hit Deploy Management Cluster. And TKG gets to work, creating a bootstrap cluster locally and using Cluster API to build out our management cluster. We're going to let this cook for a little bit and come back in just a second. After a few minutes, the process will finish and we'll have a brand new control plane in Amazon. We get our notice management cluster has been created, and we can now get to work at creating our first Kubernetes cluster. So we'll do that by going back to the command line, and we'll say TKG create cluster. We'll give it a name, and we'll specify a plan of type dev. And these plans are configurable on the back end, but one of the default plans is dev. I also like to use the verbose flag just for a little bit more impressive output. So now we're communicating with that management cluster that was just deployed in Amazon, and it's going to make for us a brand new Kubernetes cluster. We'll let this run for just a few minutes. After a few minutes, we'll have our brand new Kubernetes cluster created for us. We can get a listing of clusters with tkg get clusters, and we can see our brand new cluster has been created. We'll go ahead and fetch the credentials so we can interact with it with tkg get credentials and give the name of the cluster. After the credentials have been made available, we get a handy command that we can put in to switch our context over, and we can interact with our cluster now. We can see here we have one master node, one worker node. So let's make this do a little bit of work. We'll apply just a simple toy workload. This workload consists of 3 pods and 1 service. And here we can see the 3 pods and the service that we asked for as well. So the service that we created is of type load balancer. And since we're living in Amazon, that caused Kubernetes to create an elastic load balancer on our behalf, giving us an FQDN that we can put into our browser. And right there, we can see our workload has been created, deployed, and exposed for our users to enjoy. And if we hit the refresh button a few times, we can see that we're landing on a different pod with different refreshes. So we are landing on different pods. The work is being spread across various pods in our deployment. So I hope this was enjoyable, showing how you can go from a blank slate to a Kubernetes cluster and a workload being created. Thanks for watching.